Well, sir, it's about 8:30 o'clock in the evening as we enter the small house halfway up on the next block now. And here in the living room, we find Mrs. Victor Gook and her son, Mr. Rush Gook. Rush has just this moment arrived home, and his contorted features suggest stormy emotions. Listen.
Why, George, it's a horrible thing to contemplate.
Oh, contemplate, wannaplate.
Miss Scott hasn't mentioned it to you?
No.
She will, though. She's bound to.
I doubt if she goes so far as to ask me to give Nicer a bed for 2 whole weeks.
Why not? You've always been glad enough to oblige her before.
Yes. But...
Why, of course, Miss Scott. Send him right on over, Miss Scott. Not the least bit of trouble. Only too delighted to do you the favor. Rush's bed is plenty big enough for both. Send Nicer right on over.
Is that the way I sound?
Sure.
Well, when is this monstrous big disaster scheduled to take place?
Last 2 weeks in August.
Nicer tell you that?
Not 5 minutes ago, right out in the backyard.
What'd he say?
My traveling salesman uncle's going to take his vacation the last 2 weeks in August. He's going to spend the entire time at our house. Means I sleep with you. Better get busy and sweep up your bedroom. I like my surroundings neat and tidy.
He said that?
He said that, and he said a lot of other insulting junk.
Pretty fresh.
You think it's funny, Mom? Nicer Scott is my deadly enemy. I'd rather drown in the Pacific Ocean than sleep with a reptile so rotten.
Oh, Willie, don't holler and scream around. I've had a hard day today, and I'm tired. Get your book and read.
I couldn't compose my mind for reading. By George.
Anyway, why bother now about something that's not coming along till next August? That's crossing your bridges before you get there.
I want to take steps to avert this tragedy.
Oh, tragedy. Rush, for an enormous, big, grown-up high school gentleman, sometimes...
Where will Nicer sleep if he don't sleep here?
Huh?
Every time his traveling salesman uncle stops by next door to spend the night, Nicer gets sent over here to sleep with me. All right, his traveling salesman uncle's coming for 2 whole weeks. He'll get Nicer's bed just as usual. Miss Scott won't send Nicer downtown to the hotel for 2 weeks, will she? Of course she won't.
I doubt very much.
Well, I don't. In fact, I know otherwise. Nicer informed me himself. I'm sleeping with you the last 2 weeks in August, he says. Better start cleaning up the place.
Nicer talks too big for his shoes.
By George, Mom, let's thwart this rotten scheme.
Listen. Your father. Who's that? Burglars?
By George, before I'll allow a reptile like Nicer Scott.
Settle down, Kitty. Gov's probably tired, too. He don't want to listen to wild, excited talky talk and trash.
What are you going to say when Miss Scott telephones?
Telephones?
Telephones and asks if it'll be all right for Nicer to share my bed the last 2 weeks of August.
Oh, fiddle.
Yeah, oh, fiddle. You say what you always say. Why, of course, Miss Scott. Send him right on over, Miss Scott. Only too glad to oblige, Miss Scott. Plenty of room.
Hey, ho-do. Somebody making a stump speech? Who's your oratorical sidekick up to sleep?
This fella? This is the little man with the green feet that lives on the side of the hill.
He's not very pretty.
No, he's not. Got his face all twisted around like pancake batter.
Nothing serious is ailing him, I hope.
I expect he'll survive. Then over in the supper's basement?
Yep, and you'll be delighted to learn I covered myself with glory. Won 5 brilliantly pitched games of indoor horseshoe.
Who all played?
Ike, myself, Charlie Razorgum, Chief Chess Butter, and Miss Harris's roomer, Mr. Sledge. My superior stratagems made them all look like 30 cents. Yes, why is your little sweet flower of a face all overcast and gloomy?
He's sour as a crabapple.
You know good and well you'll tell Miss Scott okay. Why, of course, Miss Scott. Send him right on over, Miss Scott. Only too glad to oblige, Miss Scott. Rush's bed is plenty big.
I said I didn't want to talk about this anymore.
I'm stuck then, huh? I'm to be forced to share my bed with that rotten reptile of a Nicer Scott 2 whole weeks.
Go away.
Okay.
Papa is curious about this odd conversation.
Just more kids' craziness is all.
Kids' craziness.
Somebody explain?
Oh, Nicer give out some wild tale about his traveling salesman uncle going to spend his vacation next door. Willie here.
There's no wild tale to it, Mom. It's the truth.
Oh, well, what...
God, you appreciate what deadly enemies me and Nicer Scott are. Nicer informed me tonight his traveling salesman uncle is going to spend his vacation at Scott's, and I'm going to have to divvy up my bed with him the entire last 2 weeks of August.
Indeed.
You know how mad I get when I have to sleep with Nicer. I get so mad I can't see straight.
Yes, and ain't that ridiculous? 2 grown-up high school gentlemen...
Nicer knows it makes me mad, and he gloats over me. This evening he says, "Clean up the place, chum. I like my surroundings neat and tidy."
Well, if you're so soft-headed you let people tease you, you ought to be teased.
I want 3 dresser drawers for my clothes, he says. You better take your cheap junk down cellar.
I'd have laughed if anybody tried to get my gold.
My eggs want to be served at 9 o'clock on the dot, he says. And tell your mother I like 'em over easy.
Oh, he never said that.
He did too say that.
Well, if he's not the smarty pants, Peanut.
That made your blood run cold, the stuff he said.
Oh, I doubt it.
When is this outrage scheduled to come off, Hogwash?
Last 2 weeks in August.
Last 2 weeks in August?
Last 2 weeks in August.
You're upset prematurely, aren't you? This is only April.
I want to avert the tragedy.
Who feels like a game of rummy? I'm tired of this conversation.
I want to avert the tragedy, Gov. I want to nip it in the bud. I don't want to share my bed with a rotten reptile like Nicer Scott for 2 whole weeks.
Have any steps been taken? Has Miss Scott contacted your mother?
No, but she will. And I know Mom will tell her the same thing she always tells her.
What's that?
Of course, Miss Scott. Send him right on over, Miss Scott. Only too glad to oblige, Miss Scott. Rush's bed is plenty big enough for the 2 boys. No trouble at all.
I believe I heard her make that speech just last week.
Sure you did. And the week before that. At least 3 times a month his doggone traveling salesman uncle drives by and wants to stay all night. And Nicer hugs himself with glee. He appreciates I hate having to sleep with him. He appreciates we're deadly enemies. Of course, now he's happy as a lark. Gonna have to divvy up half my bed 2 whole weeks. Clean up the place, chum. Get it to looking decent for your good old guest. And don't disturb me mornings. Watch out you don't make any noise. I probably want to sleep late, so maybe you better dress out in the hall.
Pretty flip fella.
What I ought to do is paste him one upside the snoot. What I ought to do is take my 2 hands and grab him by the
I've had
scalp.
about enough of this excitement and wild talky talk. Who wants to play rummy?
Oh, one more thought before we change the subject, kiddo. Imagine Miss Scott will ask Ashtray to share his bed with Nicer?
Why, no.
You don't?
No, not for 2 weeks. They'll fix up some kind of an arrangement.
Why should they fix up some kind of an arrangement? You've always been delighted to do him the favor before. You've always gone out of your way to assure Miss Scott Nicer's welcome to sleep here. Why, of course, Miss Scott. Send him right on over, Miss Scott. Only too glad to oblige, Miss Scott. Rush,
I've heard you made that speech enough times for one evening, too, Rush. When you're age 21, maybe you can criticize your mother. Can't yet, though. Chances are we can run things around here without monstrous big advice from children. You want to play cards, Vic?
Sure.
Fish them out of the library table drawer, then.
You joining us, chicken coop?
No, thanks.
I take it you prefer to sulk, mope, and grieve.
Yes, I do.
Everyone to his taste. Be consoled by this thought, though. August is a long time off.
Where are you going?
No place.
You're not going outdoors and fight with Nicer again.
I don't want to ever see Nicer.
Shall I deal him up, Dr. Sleech?
Go ahead.
I think I'll beat you 9 games in succession.
Mm-hmm.
That Nicer is a mean little rat.
Why?
Oh, clean up the place. I want my eggs over easy. Don't make any noise while I'm sleeping.
Well, he knows he can get Willie's goat.
Well, there's your tickets. I hope they're rotten. I intend to play such masterful rummy you'll cringe and slump and swoon.
He's there now.
Who?
Nicer's traveling salesman uncle.
Yeah?
His car's in the drive.
Talk about angels, and they appear.
Telephone history again.
Mom, it's Miss Scott. I bet any amount of money it's Miss Scott.
Want you to sleep with Nicer?
Yeah.
That would be a bitter pill.
Mom, I know you wouldn't allow any horrible outrage to take place.
Let's
I
have
know
it quiet. Person wants to hear this stuff, answer the phone.
Oh.
Hello? Oh, yes. Oh, really? Well, how nice. Why, sure. Sure.
Listen to this, Doc.
Why, of course, Miss Scott. Send him right on over, Miss Scott. No trouble at all. Only too glad to oblige. No, you send him right on over. Rush's bed is plenty big enough for both of the boys.
Which concludes another brief interlude of the small house halfway up in the next block.